that sort of weird cropping as if we're looking through a frame. Sometimes people call that a keyhole effect, like you're looking through a keyhole and you can't see the whole thing. All right, we're moving on to 65. Very well-known artist, Edgar Degas. Carriage at the Races. Maybe not such a well-known painting by Degas, though. 1871. One of the things I wanted to do with this series is not pick the same old paintings that people always pick. So usually if you see Degas, you're going to see a ballerina. This painting definitely shows us some things about Degas where he was a master at. And one thing is the odd cropping of his imagery. So we see how the carriage is cut off and the horses are cut off. The nose of the horse and the legs of the horse are cut off. And the carriage on the left is cut off. That sort of weird cropping as if we're looking through a frame. Sometimes people call that a keyhole effect, like you're looking through a keyhole and you can't see the whole thing. And this is a great example of that. And then the mere fact that he puts all of that information into the lower third of the painting, not the top, right? Not the half, not the middle, not 3/4, but the lower third is where all of the information is. And then there's only very few things that break that boundary, right? 3 trees, the umbrella point, the little dog, and the man, and the horse's head, right? Those are the only things that break that. And it's sort of like, well, we got 3 things over here on the left, 3 little trees, and then 3 odd things over here where we have the dog, the man, and the horse's heads. And of course, by putting that man as the highest thing that breaks that horizon line, he becomes the most important thing. And then he has that line of the whip. I assume that's a whip for the horses that bisects that man, which actually creates even more attention to him. So he's sort of the focal point from which all things emerge. And you notice that that little whip makes a V shape with the dog, which is kind of cool, right, to get those opposing angles. The other thing about Degas' work here, somewhat influenced from Manet, is the flat black, right, that actually came from Asian art, where things get simplified and almost like a silhouette and flattened out. So we have that flat black opposed with those colored, more complex colored surfaces. There's a lot of complexity in the color and a kind of simpleness in the black. And there's a nice juxtaposition of those things. And then the last thing is his focus on shape. And for example, the shape of that carriage with that angle that comes out, and then there's the little horse that's sort of standing on the little angle, not literally, but looks like it's standing on the little angle of the carriage is really cool. And how that takes us up to, where the tents are and where the people are. But that shape of the carriage and around the wheel, and then there's a really cool shape above the horse's back to the right of the man, right? There's just that green shape of the lawn with those people in it, which sort of break up that shape. If you just really start thinking about things as shapes, not as objects, the shape of the hat, the shape of the dog, the shape of the carriage, the shape of the umbrella, the shape of the horses, how they're positioned. You can see his fascination with shape and the power of shape and how something actually becomes a unique, powerful shape rather than just an object, and that includes the negative shapes within that grass. And that, of course, led to modernism, thinking in a modernistic way, and which leads to abstract painting where the shapes become more important than the subject or the object of the shape, which is a huge aspect of modern art.